Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Welcome, everyone, to our follow-up question and answer session for the Proposal Writing Part 2 workshop, walking through IRCC's CFP application. My name is Adil Merab, and please note this session is being recorded and will be available on the project webpage early next week. The presentation today is available to download on the project webpage. The link to the project webpage will be shared in a moment in the chat box. Next slide, please. First, we would like to mention a few housekeeping, engagement, and self-care points for this session. OCASI is committed to supporting full participation and engagement by all attendees at our events, including people with disabilities. This session is facilitated in English, French simultaneous interpretation, American Sign Language, ASL, and Quebec Sign Language, LSQ, and English captioning are available. If you wish to enable the French simultaneous interpretation, please go to your meeting control toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom screen and click on the interpretation icon, looks like a globe, and then click on French. In the same feature, you can also click on under Watch on ASL for American Sign Language, or for LSQ, you can click on French Sign Language. Next slide, please. If you'd like to enable the closed caption feature, you can click on the icon also at the bottom of the Zoom screen, CC, to enable it. And we encourage all the participants to share your thoughts and your questions on Slido. You can either go to the Slido website and include the code presented on the screen, or you can click on the link that will be posted in the meeting chat in a moment. Or if you prefer to scan the QR code here on the screen with your phone. We're gonna give a few seconds just in case anyone would like to scan the QR code. In the meantime, if any of the features that were mentioned, you would like us to repeat the instructions, please let us know in the chat box and we will provide those steps. Okay, next slide, please. Zoom fatigue is real, so do what you need to do to take care of you first. Stay present and be attentive to your body and your emotions. And of course, please fill out the evaluation form that will be shared at the end of the session. When the meeting ends or you leave, your browser will open with the links to the survey. So please take a moment to fill in this very short survey to allow us to keep improving our future workshops. Thank you. Next slide, please. Land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the people of Turtle Island. The secret land on which we are gathered today has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. We acknowledge the land OCASI is situated on, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon, One Palm Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce you to KAME consultants who were the leading facilitators in the previous session on December 21, Keisha and Lesa. Keisha and Lesa, whenever you're ready, please feel free to start.
Thank you and good morning. Sorry, good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. We're actually really excited to be back to have the opportunity to continue this portion of the webinar, where we will be able to walk you through the IRCC's call for proposal application process. We'd like to thank OCASI's Capacity Building and Training for Small Black-Led and Racialized Organizations initiative. My name is Keisha Evans, and I'm the principal consultant of KAME Consulting. And joining me is Lesa Medhin, who is the lead grant writer for the KAME Consulting team. Next slide, please. Okay, so in our last workshop on December 21st, our focus was on navigating the essential components of the IRCC proposal process. We highlighted IRCC's commitment to immigrants, migrants, and refugees and their vision to provide services to the right clients at the right time, regardless of who they are or where they are in Canada. We shared the two programs offered by IRCC, the Settlement and Resettlement Program, and reviewed the three funding streams, which were the Francophone Integration Pathway, Equity Stream, and Service Delivery Improvement. So as a recap, we provided a step-by-step exploration of the application process. We covered the summary, activities, outcomes, considerations for equity, diversity, and inclusion. We also addressed other aspects such as handling additional questions, assessing capacity, and the evaluation process. So today, we're going to focus, our agenda will look at the budget. We'll go through the mandatory document section, the status page, submitting the application, the core principles and assessment criteria, and of course the project scoring. Then what we'll do is answer the questions that were posted in the chat or the Slido throughout that last session. And then we'll open up for additional Q&A so that you can have an opportunity to ask additional questions or seek further clarification based on today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, let's provide you with some key dates because some of them are coming up. So the funding application started on November 14th. It's going to close on January the 31st, 2024 at 5 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. So the aim is to submit your applications before that deadline. If your application is successful, the funding will start on April the 1st, 2025, and those approved projects are eligible to receive funding for up to 5 years, concluding on March 31st, 2030. Next slide, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Keisha, for the overview. Okay, so this budget, we're taking a look at the budget, and the section is a section that many people indicate that they would have the most challenges with. So let's begin by breaking it down as best as we can, step by step. Next slide, please. Okay, so a well-structured budget is really a critical component of any successful grant application. It's very important to thoroughly review the grant guidelines to understand the specific requirements and restrictions relating to budgeting. Remember that the guidelines will describe which expenses are eligible for funding and which expenses are not eligible. It's important to complete all the sections that apply to your application. Some of them are mandatory field, but pay a close attention to expenses that will fluctuate over the course of time. For example, staff salaries that take into consideration a pay increase or the annual increases of the employer portion of mandatory government deductions, for example. But the final budget should be balanced, meaning the expected income and your anticipated expenses should be the same. For example, if you plan to pay a full-time employee an annual salary of $65,000 per year, make sure to request an equal amount of $65,000 per year from the IRCC. Next slide. Okay. Are we on the next slide? Okay, there we go. Okay, so firstly, we'll start off by entering your proposal start and end dates. Keisha mentioned previously that the application process is currently underway for the 2024 call for proposals. However, the funding period doesn't actually commence until April 1st, 2025, and must end by March 31st, 2030. The reason why I'm iterating this is because you must keep these dates in mind as you navigate through your application process. The project start and end dates, as well as key activity performance evaluation dates, will also help you with your budget planning. Here you will indicate where your proposal start and end dates are, which again must fall between April 1st, 2025 and March 31st, 2030. You can click on the icons circled here in red and use the drop-down arrows to select your dates. If your funding period includes a part of a fiscal year, but not all of it, you still have to add that fiscal year to your proposal. So, for example, if your proposal begins on April 1st, 2025 and ends on March 31st, 2028, then your proposal should have 3 fiscal years listed for 2025 to 2026, 2026 to 2027, as well as 2027 to 2028. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So in this application, the budget template breaks down expenses into 4 areas: program delivery, administrative capital, and revenue. These are the expense categories that you will need to think about. Perhaps you may need to do some research or seek quotations from like a third-party contractor to ensure that you're providing the most feasible budget possible. You should be prepared to provide a detailed narrative or a justification for each line item in your budget. So basically you're explaining why each cost is necessary for the project and how it aligns with your goals. It will not make a lot of sense for you to ask for funds and expenses that are not funded or that are ineligible or that you won't even incur. So at least funds that you did not previously indicate that you would incur in your project description. Again, if you plan to ask for funding for a particular expense item, you should be referring to it in your description or your activities section, your capacity section, or even in your evaluation section. Please note that the eligible portion of HST, GST, and also where applicable PST should be calculated into the proposed project costs. So for example, there is actually a section in the budget to indicate GST and HST expenses. However, if you plan to, for instance, purchase like a capital item, like a laptop or some other kind of equipment, you can enter the amount that includes the cost after taxes. And you can even include a calculated cost that includes delivery or warranty or maintenance costs. Next slide. Okay, so here, this screenshot shows you where you will enter certain budget line items, such as salaries, like wages and benefits. For example, under program delivery, you can click on the drop-down arrow under the line item section. A list of eligible program delivery expenses will pop up, and you can choose as many as apply. There'll be a number of different selections, such as client transportation, childcare, travel and accommodation, training, research. Here we have selected, as an example, salary, wages, and benefits. You can use your tab button to tab over to enter a description to further detail each line item. Here I put 1 full-time employee, and then under the requested amount, I've entered an annual amount of $65,000. This includes the base salary, mandatory employer-related costs. Some people refer to it as MERCs or their government remittances. And I've also included health benefits into that calculation. I would then explain that, those items that I've included in my description. And then if you were to scroll over to the right a bit more in this budget, you could also fill in amounts for other resources such as cash or a value of an in-kind donation. For an example, maybe you have a program delivery expense for workshops or a conference, and you need funding for space rental. That will be, but however, in your project, one of your partners has agreed to cover space rental for you. So you can enter that as an expense line item, but under the resources in kind, you would enter the value of the space if you had to pay for it. For example, $2,000 per session, $5,000, whatever the amount is. When you enter your amount, the total for each year would automatically calculate. But remember that if your project has multiple fiscal years, the information that is displayed on the screen in each cost category section is only showing for the fiscal year that is highlighted in the total requested amount section. Okay. This budget template does provide a built-in calculator. This can be useful if you're trying to calculate a percentage for an administrative cost, for example. The administrative line item is defaulted as negotiated administrative rate. So here, you don't actually need to specify amounts or line items. To simply calculate and enter a rate, for example, 15%, that will calculate the administrative amount as a proportion of the program delivery amount. You must, of course, click Save to secure your information, but you can also click Delete if you want to remove your selections. I would suggest clicking the Save button very often, because after a short period of time, I'd say about 20 minutes of idling in the system, it logs you out and you will likely lose information that was not previously saved. Okay. We can go to the next slide. We can actually go to slide 16, please. Okay. Okay. So here is a screenshot that opens up the budget a little bit more. As you enter values into various budget lines, the subtotals will populate into the total requested amount section, as I mentioned before. You can add new line items by clicking on the new button we're pointing at here in the red arrows. So once you've entered all of your eligible line items, you've gone step by step in entering the information, the line item, the description, the amounts for your current proposal year, you'll have to repeat this process for each fiscal year of your project. For example, if your project is planned for 5 years, you must enter 5 years worth of revenue and expenses. To reduce the amount of work that takes in section 8 here in the budget, it's recommended that you just complete the program delivery, the administrative, the capital, and the revenue sections for a single fiscal year. Then click the copy button beside the new button to create a new fiscal year with identical values. And then, of course, you can adjust or delete the values and descriptions per year as necessary. Okay. Again, don't forget to review your entries and save, but always double check your calculations and don't hesitate to use your financial management experience or do your research where applicable. as opposed to entering arbitrary line items and amounts that may not provide a feasible outlook to your budget. You want to make sure that you're presenting a really fiscally minded budget, one that makes sense to the funders, one that makes sense for your project, and one that makes sense for how you can actually manage your finances. Next slide. Okay. As I mentioned before, if you have partners who are making financial or in-kind contributions, you need to add the fiscal year contributions to from each partner as revenue. So we can actually move to the next slide to see a screenshot, and I'll just describe a bit more here. So this is sort of a screen capture of what the revenue section looks like before adding any entries. So you will start by clicking on the new button to add a source of revenue. The system allows you to choose the partner from the legal name funding source applet. There's a search tool that you can choose from, or you can enter the name yourself. Once you find the partner name or complete your entry, you click OK and save. Then you can calculate the cash or in-kind contributions per partner. For example, if you have a partner A and a partner B who will be contributing free workshop space, valued at $300 and $500 per workshop, respectively, for 5 sessions each during a fiscal year, you'll enter both contributors separately as in-kind. So partner A would be 300 times 5 or $1,500 for that year. And partner B would be $500 times 5 or $2,500 for that year. There's also a built-in calculator here to help you with those calculations. Also, you want to be sure to provide a detailed explanation in the description field to include any relevant information about your contribution. So keep it brief, but be concise. And then again, you're going to repeat this process for each fiscal year of the project's duration. Next slide. Okay. So finally, the budget section does include a very particular question about money owed to the federal government. You must respond to this question whether you, as a lead applicant, of course, do owe or not. The information must be entered before you can actually submit your proposal. So if you do owe and you select yes from the drop-down list, you'll be directed to another page to enter the amount owing. But you will need to make sure that whatever you enter is the correct amount. And if you're not sure, if you're unsure about how much you owe, I would suggest consulting your bookkeeper or your accountant, and do that well in advance. Next slide.
Okay, so that kind of concludes the budget portion. Then now we're going to go through the mandatory documents. So thanks, Lesa, for going through that. So in terms of the mandatory documents, it's important that you attach constitutional bylaws, letter of patent. What that means is that the organization that's submitting the documents that's being asked to include is the constitutional bylaws, which is also known as your internal governing rules, and it's a letter of patent or equivalent document, really just asking about the organization's legal status, along with the submission for review or consideration. This is asked because it's used for transparency or legal compliance to ensure that the organization has a formal and recognized structure. So you must attach your most recent annual report and financial statements for the last fiscal year, which means that the organization is required to submit its most recent annual report, providing a broader overview of the activities from that year, and financial statements offering detailed financial information for the last fiscal year. So this requirement, again, is part of the transparency and compliance measures, ensuring that the organization's financial status is transparent and can be assessed by those who are reviewing the submission. You must also attach a document with the names of your board of directors. So the document that should include the names of each board member, their titles or roles within the board. This is usually a standard practice to ensure, again, transparency, accountability, and to verify the governance structure of the organization. So it allows those reviewing the submission to understand who's responsible for guiding and making decisions on behalf of the organization. Okay, so it's important to know that applications that are missing these mandatory documents will be considered an incomplete application. And incomplete applications will be removed from the process. So there will be no follow-up from IRCC to obtain missing information. So it's important to have these things accessible even prior to starting your application. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the status page section. So the status page in an application is a section that provides real-time updates on the progress and the current status of the submitted information. It allows you to track and monitor where you are at in the review process. So you can check here to see what is outstanding and what else needs to be completed. So it's just an information for yourself to see, what do I need to submit, what's already done. Next slide, please. So now we're moving to the end of the application, and this is where you will come to a declaration. Did you do next slide, please? Declaration, please. Yep, perfect. Thank you. This section here is where you'd provide a formal statement or affirmation to confirm the accuracy and truthfulness of the information that you provided in the application. So it's important to review the application before completing the declaration. Then you'll need to sign it, ensure that you hit save, and then hit submit. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That's the end of the actual navigating the system, the GSC portal, and the application process. We're going to discuss the core principles and how they relate to the assessment criteria. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so all proposals will be assessed individually by the IRCC's core principles. These principles are based on gender-based analysis plus GBA plus criteria integrated into projects in order to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion, or EDI outcomes for diverse newcomers. This is also judged against the mandatory and asset criteria that will be listed in the funding guidelines for the services and streams that they offer. The core, C-O-R-E, refers to proposals that are client-centered, meaning that there is an importance to prioritize the needs and the preferences of eligible clients or your target audience. This involves understanding and addressing the specific requirements and expectations of those for whom the project is intended to serve. Okay, the O stands for outcomes driven, meaning that the project should address how it would be achieving specific outcomes or goals. So instead of merely detailing your activities, you want to emphasize what the intended results and the impact that the proposal aims to deliver. Okay, and now the R stands for responsive to need. Here you're talking about what specific need is the project addressing. So this involves a thorough understanding and examination of the issues at hand and tailoring the proposal to address those needs effectively. And lastly, the E demonstrates an effective use of resources. So in your proposal, the projects should demonstrate an efficiency in resource utilization. This includes considering the budgetary constraints, considering your time management, and the optimization of available resources, in particular, strategic partners, and anything that would enhance your ability to achieve your desired outcomes. All right, next slide. All right, I'll talk about how your project is scored. So the IRC will give your project a score out of a maximum of 100. Your ability to meet the core principles, the CORE principles, will be assessed, and they fall into 3 sections here. So the project relevance is worth 40% of your project score. In order to gain a full score, this means that you will have clearly demonstrated that there is a need for this project or service in your community, in your region, or nationally. The relevance can be proven using statistics, data, you can use anecdotes, information from a needs assessment or an environmental scan, for example. The IRCC will be assessing whether or not your proposal is aligned to its priorities and will provide services to the right clients at the right time. Okay, your potential for success. So this is your feasibility. It's also worth 40% of your overall project score. Here you'll be assessed on how well you're able to demonstrate your proposal evaluation methodology. For example, will you be using surveys, interviews, maybe evaluation forms, a product or an app to collect data and measure program success? You will also be assessed on how well your plan is aligned to the performance assessment information that's provided in section 3 of your outcomes within the application. When you respond to how you track outcomes and associated activities, you will include which indicators will be used to identify progress towards the outcome. You'll talk about the methods and the tools that will be used to acquire measurements of these indicators, when and how often measurements will be recorded, and how analysis of these indicators will help to facilitate ongoing improvement of your project. So basically, you'll be scored on whether or not your plan demonstrates an ability to organize activities, monitor performance, and evaluate project results. And last, where 20% of your project score is your cost effectiveness. This is where the IRCC will be critiquing your budget to see if you are able to demonstrate a financially feasible approach to building and managing a multi-year budget. So beyond the budget template, they'll also be looking at your use of internal and external resources, such as income or in-kind services from partners and human resource capacity. So if the lead applicant has a demonstrated history of managing large-scale projects with a large budget, this information will be helpful to mention in section 6, your capacity section. Okay, next slide. All right. So there'll be a separate comparative EDI score for project design, where you can gain a maximum of 50 points towards your overall score out of 100. So the project design, equity, diversity, inclusion, this signifies an approach to planning that not only focuses on achieving project goals, but also incorporates principles of fairness, recognition of diversity, and active inclusion of all the relevant stakeholders. This approach also aims to create projects that are not only successful in their outcomes, but also contribute to a social equity and inclusivity. It's particularly important for addressing social, economic, and cultural disparities, and also for promoting a more just and equitable society in general. Questions relating to to elements in the project design are the GBA plus, which includes diversity in client target population served, 50% of your project design AI score, or up to 25 points. So the funder wants to see that the project not only considers gender, but also takes into consideration a broader spectrum of diversity factors when you're assessing how programs or services may affect different segments of your population. Truth and reconciliation is worth 30% or 15 points of your project design EDI score. This means that the funder wants to see a strong commitment to incorporating truth and reconciliation efforts within the project's design, with a substantial impact on the overall EDI score. And lastly, targeted programming for specific equity deserving client populations is worth 20% or 10 points of your project design EDI score. This is related to how you have described any additional targeted measures for specific populations or priorities. Example, your programming that addresses gender-based violence. Maybe you're talking about advancing gender equality. Maybe you're addressing racism or specific programming for seniors or other vulnerable sectors, etc. Next slide. Okay, again, data collection and EDI in organization capacity is not actually scored. So what that means is the IRC does ask organizations to respond to self-declaration questions related to their anti-harassment policies, equity-based policies, how the organization applies GBA plus internally, and what barriers they may experience in their program delivery, diversity in leadership, their diversity in governance, diversity in their frontline staff. While you're asked to provide self-declaration responses to these questions, how you respond, even how you collect or don't collect data, is not actually a scoring factor for the proposal. The purpose of these questions is just for the IRCC's internal data collection purposes only. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so thanks for that, Lesa. That actually concludes the application process of this workshop. What we'd like to do is to provide some proposal writing strategies. Well, they're more of, I guess I would say more of tips that can help you with this application or any other proposals that you may be working on as well. So I'll just go through those with you. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the first thing is research. Take the time to thoroughly understand the IRCC application or whatever application that you're doing. Understand what their values are, what are their priorities, and what are their areas of interest. This knowledge will guide your proposal. Also, we always say build a relationship with the funder. It's crucial. It's not just about seeking the fund. It's about having that long-term connection or those relationship that can make a lasting impact. So you want to think about how your proposal can best align with in this particular situation, the IRCC vision, and to provide services to the right client at the right time. Also, review the IRCC's frequently asked questions. This is a treasure trove of insights. It anticipates common queries, like questions that may be asked, and it also provides some valuable guidance. There's also a glossary of terms to assist for those, that may need that as well. And also keep it realistic. ensure that your proposal aligns with the funder's expectations and limitations. Speak in your own voice. So I say just bring out what you need to do. Let your passion for your project really, this is your opportunity to highlight some of the work in which that you're doing. Also stay relevant. Tailor your proposal to the funder's goals. Show them that your project matters in the context of their mission. Ask yourself, in my project, does my project include any of the EDI, or, does it speak to GBA? Does it connect with any of the truth and reconciliation? And then also incorporate evidence and proof. That would be like numbers, like any sort of data, testimonials, some success stories. They will all add weight to your proposal. Evidence really strengthens your case as well. And then also consider, Lesa spoke a lot about partners and additional funding sources. Collaboration really does enhance your proposal strength. It also shows that you're resourceful and that you're also connected. One of the biggest thing is give yourself some time. Rush proposals may not reflect your best work, and the proposal is the application is due in a few weeks. So plan ahead to present the most compelling case. So the application is lengthy. It's lengthy, and the GCS portal, it is very nuanced and may be complex for some user, especially if this is your first time. You'll need to learn how to navigate it effectively. Okay, next slide, please. A quick heads up regarding file uploads for your IRCC applications. So the system allows files up to 10 megabytes. So convert your mandatory or supporting documents early and upload them to your registration portal. It's also good practice, especially as you start going towards the last week for the call of proposal. Remember, it's ending on January the 31st. And you might say, why do you want to do this early? Well, what that does, it helps avoid overloading the system in those final hours when everyone is trying to submit. So try to get that yours in as soon as possible. Now, if you run into any technical bumps while completing the application form in the grants and contribution system, or if you're grappling with reducing file size, you can reach out to the GCS help desk. Lesa could put the email in the chat. And just remember, the earlier that you're prepping, then you'll save yourself time for that last minute stress. Next slide, please. So here's the contact. We'll also put the contact information for any questions or clarifications with the call for proposal. Lesa, if you could just drop that in the chat as well. Next slide. Okay, so Adele, we have reached the finished portion of the walking through the proposal. I'm thinking now is a good time. We could take a 5-minute or up to you 5 or 10-minute break. And then when we return, we will go through the questions that were asked on Slido and chat from the December 21st session. So you let us know.
Thank you, Keisha, and thank you, Lesa. Yes,
No
let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 12:50. 12:50 will be here.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 12:50. The break is over. Thank you, Keisha, and thank you, Lesa. We will now continue with the next section, which will be question and answers. First of all, we're gonna address the questions that were provided by you, the participants, in the previous session on December 21. And afterwards, we'll share Slido to address the questions that you are now sharing with us there. Thank you. Keisha, whenever you are ready.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if Lesa has returned. There she is. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to jump into the Q&A again to that portion. So we'll first start off with some of the questions in which that we received. So the first question was, how should truth and reconciliation, EDI, and GBA plus analysis be applied to project activities for the overall project? Are you on mute? I'm not sure. Can't hear you, Lesa. No. That's okay. All right. So let me go ahead and while Lesa fixed that. So let me see you trying again. Adele, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you, Keisha. I think
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you just
Okay.
speak for a few seconds just to make sure that the audio is well?
Certainly. Yeah, you're sounding a little bit scratchy to me, but can everybody hear me now? Do I sound fine?
Now
Yes.
it's getting better. Yes. Thank you very
Perfect.
much.
Thank you.
No
Okay.
worries.
All right, here we go yet again. Keisha, can you just repeat the question, please? Thank you.
I can. First question, how should truth and reconciliation, EDI, and GBA plus analysis be applied to project activities or the overall project?
Okay, so this call for proposal is a competitive process. Making sure to incorporate truth and reconciliation, EDI, and GBA plus analysis can earn you up to 50 points of your overall 100 scoring points, as I mentioned before. There's a number of potential ways to apply this to your project and even your overall organizational structure. So you can consider how you will develop and incorporate anti-harassment, equity-based policies, how your organization applies GBA or GBA internally, taking a closer look at how women, men, and gender diverse people may experience your policies, your programs, and your initiatives differently, and what barriers they may experience while taking part in your program. This includes programming for diverse populations that experience greater barriers to services, women, youth, two SLGBTQI plus groups, racialized newcomers, seniors, people with disabilities, and how you address specific issues such as sexual and gender-based violence, mental health needs. You can include GBA plus in your diversity, in your leadership, in your government, in your frontline staff, as I was talking about before. But it is important to include this in your overall project design. Okay, we can go to the next question.
Keisha, I don't know, but you're on mute in case you're talking.
I sure was. Thanks for that. As we can see, what are the implications of not formally following GBA and guidelines for targeted programming? So what are the implications for that?
Okay, so in addition to the core principle, project score, the client-centered, the outcomes-driven, the responsive to need, and the effective use of resources, all proposals will receive a separate EDI score for how well their design of the project incorporates GBA+. truth and reconciliation, and targeted programming for equity deserving clients. Both the core and the EDI in project design scores will be used to make funding decisions for successful applicants. The IRC has been specific in their encouragement to applicants to incorporate GBA Plus in their design, in their implementation, and even in their evaluation of the proposed project. And they encourage you to do this as much as possible. This is to create an effective programming for newcomers. So I could say that by not following GBA Plus guidelines, your scoring could be impacted.
Mhm. Thanks for that. We'll move to the next questions, which are what strategies can be used for building a proposal that includes activities under both NARS and community connections?
Successful funded applicants will be required to use the new National Standardized Assessment Template. This is a template that's provided by the IRCC. It's quite involved, but it's basically to inform the development of the funded applicants' client assessment tools in how they deliver the Needs and Assets Assessment Referral Service, or the NAARS. This assessment aims to determine the needs across a broad spectrum of settlement areas, such as official language learning, information and orientation, employment needs, and connecting eligible clients to social groups and networks in their chosen community. I could say that one strategy for building a proposal that includes activities under both NAARS and community connection is to use a language-based approach, specifically informing clients that services are offered and available in French by Francophone service providers, perhaps assessing the needs that are gender or ability specific, or referring clients to service providers that support their intersectional needs while connecting them with a community that speaks their language and has a mandate to address their needs in a barrier-free way.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. Move on. So is it necessary to choose a funding stream after selecting indirect services? And does priority selection apply to indirect services?
Your selection really depends on what you have the experience and the capacity to do, or what you and your partners or you as a lead applicant have experience and capacity to execute. The IRCC is interested in indirect projects that support two specific outcomes. I'll outline them. The first outcome is a settlement sector improvement in capacity to provide coordinated and effective settlement support to newcomers, including equity deserving groups, which can still have direct components. For example, and maybe you're doing outreach to employers that support service delivery of mentoring activities, or developing an intake tool to improve client placement. The scope is to improve the ability of your organization to carry out services. The second outcome of indirect projects that the IRCC is interested in are non-settlement partners who improve capacity to provide support to diverse groups of newcomers across all sectors in large, medium, and small communities, including Francophone minority groups. This can also include direct projects with indirect local non-settlement stakeholders. This also includes projects with activities that influence the ability of local stakeholders to work with newcomers and to address newcomers' needs. For example, settlement workers in schools, working with school staff to address client student needs. No matter which way you go with this, the indirect activities should lead to one of the two indirect IRCC outcomes. It's important that the scope of your outcome, such as your organization or your local partners, the settlement sector, or the settlement service line, the non-settlement stakeholders, including employers and community institutions, and the focus of your outcome. For example, whether it's to improve capacity in GBA+, to strengthen evaluation capacity, or to increase capacity to retain newcomers. It's important that all of this is just clearly indicated. I think that was it for this page. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, so that is, okay, about the separate applications. Are separate applications required for each funding stream?
Well, applicants can apply to receive money for support under the settlement program or the resettlement assistance program, or both. However, if applying to both programs, you must submit a separate application for each. This funding process covers, this call for proposal covers both direct and indirect services funded under both programs. We know that, and it has 3 themes: the French integration pathway, the equity stream, and the service delivery improvement. Keisha, you and I discussed this in detail at the December 21st workshop. However, for those of you who weren't aware, the equity stream is dedicated funding stream within the settlement program only. This is to provide targeted support to organizations who represent racialized communities, migrant women, and 2 LSGBTQI+ groups, etc., and populations to increase their participation in the settlement sector. So when thinking about your application for funding, first consider your intended program, whether it's a settlement program or the resettlement assistance program. Then consider your stream, whether it's the French integration pathway, the equity stream, or the service delivery improvement stream.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next one. So what does not funded mean in the context of the equity stream?
Projects that are not funded under the equity stream, like I said, include direct services to clients. So not funded or ineligible activities include standalone resource development that is not connected to other capacity building activities, or where there is a disproportionate focus on tool development. For example, maybe your project is for developing digital platforms such as an app or a website. These are ineligible projects. This also includes implementing or receiving organizational capacity building activities that are not related to the settlement sector or the organization's participation in the settlement sector. This also includes conferences or similar large-scale events. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so this was questions about eligibility and compliance. Okay, so we got some questions about, does CORE apply to local immigration partnerships or LIP?
Well, because the LIP because it needs to demonstrate community readiness in their application and through supporting documents, you can use things like your evidence of multi-sector support, municipal support, or community size support. Because of this, CORE does apply. So LIPs can demonstrate how they use a client-centered approach to how they meet clients' needs. Maybe they can gather letters of support from partners, such as from different sectors, such as settlement, maybe the health sector, education, or emergency services, or maybe how the LIP on a municipal level, how they are responsive to needs or how they share resources by demonstrating their commitment to participate in partnerships, or whether as an observer or as a member.
Okay. And for this section, can non-charitable agencies apply for the call for proposals? And can they use a charitable trustee?
yes, non-charitable agencies can apply. The call for proposal is open to, and I'll just maybe list out the types of entities that can apply. So provincial, territorial, and municipal governments, international organizations, not-for-profit organizations, including non-governmental organizations or NGOs, non-profit corporations, community groups, umbrella organizations, and regulatory bodies and apprenticeships authorities. We have businesses. This includes those that provide indirect services, such as employers who hire newcomers, private language schools, conference organizers, web or production firms, or for tool development. There's also educational institutions, such as including an entire school board, a district or division, and even individuals. Again, there are certain eligibility criteria for each, but in general, yes, these are the potential qualifying applicants.
Next, do we move to the next slide? Okay, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so this were questions about the application content and lots of questions about the character limits. So what is the optimal use of character limits in application sections, and is brevity acceptable?
Well, each response section will indicate a specific word limit. For example, and we broke this down a lot when in our first presentation in December. We were very specific about the word limit. So I guess that's why people are asking these questions. But for example, for section 1, which is the summary, you only have a maximum of 15,000 characters. And this character limit includes spaces. You'll not be able to save your work if you have used more characters than that. However, you can use less. Brevity is always acceptable as long as you're able to clearly respond to the question. It would be optimal to use as many characters as you possibly can so that you can make sure that you're providing enough information for your application to be properly assessed by the IRCC.
Okay, and then the next question is, what are the character limit specifications for activity descriptions?
Well, you'll have 1,500 characters maximum to describe all of your activities. I mean, I agree with anyone who thinks that this is not adequate. However, just to be sure to respond to the following questions, you need to respond in the activity description section to why is the activity needed for this project? When will the activity take place? How often will the activity take place? Example, monthly, quarterly. How will the activity be implemented? How will targeted clients directly benefit from this activity? How will you engage your target clients? And what mitigation strategies will be considered to ensure the success of the activity?
Okay.
Next slide.
Yep. And in terms of supporting materials and budgeting, we had 2 questions. So one was, can videos be included as testimonial support documents?
So videos and images can be included as support documents. Keisha had mentioned earlier that when she was referring to the mandatory documents, the IRC only allows uploaded files that are no larger than 10 megabytes. To put it into context, 1 megabyte is equal to 1,024 kilobytes. So if your file is larger than 10 megabytes or 10,240 kilobytes, the system will not accept your file. You'll simply get an error message. It'll pop up so that you know that your file is too large, and it won't let you advance. You will have to take steps to convert or decrease your file before uploading.
And the second part is a 5-year budget plan necessary?
Well, no, you will need to present a budget for each year that you intend to carry out your project. For example, if you intend for your project to be 3 years, you provide a budget for 3 years. Likewise, if you do have a 5-year budget, it's only necessary to build out a 5-year budget if your activities are planned for 5 years.
Thanks, Lisa. Next slide, please. So this was regarding service alignment and program description. So should services be aligned with at least one of the 5 priorities?
The services can be aligned with more than one of IRCC's priorities, but yes, the services provided by your proposal must be aligned with at least one.
And should the description of targeted programming focus on current programming or proposed activities for the call for proposal?
When responding to questions within the application related to summaries, description of activities, or target programming, here is where you're providing information that is related to your proposed activities for the call for proposal. If you want to speak more about your current programming, if they're different from your proposed activities, you can do this in section 6 in your capacity section under the project capacity, where you'll be detailing your experience gained through similar projects or events in the past, including information about outcomes that you may have met or lessons you may have learned, or any project event related resources or infrastructures that you already have in place.
Thanks, Lisa. Next slide, please. Okay, service alignment again. How should the target audience be selected, especially for persons with disabilities and other intersecting identities?
We would recommend that your target audience be selected based on your capacity and experience delivering target programming. You will need to think about how best you can design or enhance services that meet the needs of specific client populations that's facing particular barriers to settlement and integration. For example, programming exclusively intended for women or seniors, racialized newcomers, people with disabilities, and maybe addressing issues such as sexual or gender-based violence and mental health. But programming for persons with disabilities can address inequities they experience, such as accommodations and accessibility supports resources in the Canadian legal system, their rights, their responsibilities, connections to referrals and organizations, and services for persons with disabilities in general. This is really to foster connection between the newcomers and Canadians living with disabilities, maybe volunteering, social activities, life skills, etc.
And then, how is high tech defined in the context of services?
High tech. The IRC's approach to modes of service delivery for their current call, this includes in-person and remote, as well as hybrid service delivery. So high tech refers to online or digital services that have a web-based platform, or maybe uses an app or a software that is accessed by the computer, by a cell phone or a tablet. The service itself can be staff-led or self-directed. For example, an online registration or maybe 24-hour access to digital information or virtual meeting platform. But the purpose of using high-tech services is to support newcomers to access services in a way that is most convenient and feasible for them. An example of a low-tech service would be something delivered by phone, text, or email.
Okay, next slide. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so now we are looking at partnerships and joint applications. I believe these are our last 2 questions. One is, are partnerships and letters of support required?
Well, partnerships themselves are not mandatory. However, they are encouraged by the IRCC. If you do have a partner in mind, whether formally confirmed or not, it's best to include their information in section 6 in capacity. However, a letter of support, while again not required, is highly recommended. The letter should highlight a brief description of your partner's mission, mandate, activities, the partner's intended level of support, and their relationship to the lead applicant. Partnerships do increase your potential for higher project scoring because it does relate to demonstrating an effective use of resources, which is one of the 4 core principles, and as well as your potential for success, which is worth 40% of your project score.
Thanks, Lisa. And then our last question that we received were, are there restrictions on joint applications, and can multiple applications be submitted as a lead or sub-partner?
Well, there are no restrictions as it relates to joint applications, or partnerships. As I mentioned, the IRCC encourages an effective use of community resources through strategic partnerships, whatever that looks like for your groups. However, while an organization can lend their support or form a partnership agreement with more than one project, a lead applicant, this is important to note, a lead applicant cannot apply more than one time.
You have to say that again. You went into a robot for that one. Say it one more time.
I did. Okay, good. Thank you, because this is important. So I was saying that partners can partner with multiple projects or multiple applicants, but the lead applicant cannot apply more than once.
Thank you, Lisa.
Is that clear?
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you so much. Adele, that is the last of the questions from the chat and Slido. So we'll stop sharing now. Adele, you can come
Yes.
on in. We could
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Keisha and Lisa. We'll be sharing, just to echo to what Keisha has said, we have finished addressing the questions provided on December 21, and now we'll be addressing the questions provided today.
Okay. All right.
And we can start from the first question here, and then I'll check it meaning done, and we'll move to the other ones.
Okay. So Lisa, are core principles also used to access indirect services?
To access, or maybe they meant to say assess?
Assess, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe it's
yes.
assess. Yeah, assess.
Yes. Yes.
So in the short answer,
The
yes,
short answer
is yes, they will
yes.
also be.
The core. Yes, all activities, whether indirect or direct, are assessed based on core principles.
Okay. We'll move to the next question, Adele. If we do not know what in-kind expenses will be covered for program delivery during the 5 years, what is recommended?
Okay, if you do not know in-kind expenses, I would say, to be on the safe side, I would guesstimate. But if you're going to guesstimate, I would say to have this potentially in a support letter from a partner. I wouldn't necessarily put in-kind services that you're absolutely unclear about, that are random. If there's a high potential that you will have in-kind services, perhaps you're partnering with somebody and you have a commitment with them for 2 years, but they're saying to you, well, if it works out for 2 years and we're still around and we're still able to support you, we'll continue to support you in this way for the next 3 years. To me, I would recommend that you add that, and you would be clear about that. You would say, whether in a formal document or a letter of support, you would indicate that this is the intention. You're hopeful that this money will be made available to you. Because what happens is, if you form that partnership and relationship with the funder, meaning that you get funded, any changes that happen throughout the course of your project lifetime can be massaged, it can be discussed, it can be managed. There's room here and there for things to move and shift within your budget line, within your program delivery. There's lots of room for that. So funders aren't going to be sticklers about you saying you have in-kind expenses for year 3 or 4 that don't end up happening.
Yeah.
There could be ways to adjust the situation.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll move to the next one. Should information about other funders be included from the initiation of the organization or from the latest contract under organization's capacity info?
Oh, for sure. If you have a commitment from any other funder towards your project, even if it's whether it's confirmed or anticipated, I would definitely enter that. Funders do like to see organizations that do their homework, meaning that they spend the time to research, plan, find resources outside of that one particular funder. This actually, believe it or not, enhances your ability to come across as a relevant and feasible project, because you're saying that even if I don't get your funding, funder A, I do have a little bit of support from funder B, who's also, co-signed or, is interested in my project. And sometimes funders do communicate with others. So it's actually kind of a benefit for you if you do have other funding sources to list them, because if those two funders have a relationship, they may actually communicate during their assessment, their assessment time. Yeah. To coordinate efforts and say, I will fund as you fund, I will fund.
Thanks, Lesa. Oh, looks okay. I thought there was a different question, but that's okay. Activity. So community partners, engagement, LIP indirect. Does this mean all LIP activities need to be listed under this section in under 1,500 characters? Partners.
Okay, if I understand the question correctly, I'll answer it this way. Any section in the application that has a word limit, please just adhere to the word limit. It's not, or the character limit. It's not going to let you save or move beyond that section if you are even one period or one space or one hyphen over 1,500 characters. You will have to decrease. I use contracting words. I use, acronyms. There's all kinds of strategies you can use. You can even, seek out a plain language consultant, somebody who is skilled at, taking language and making it plain and concise to support you in this.
Okay. And the next question is, what mandatory documents are required to be submitted by a municipality?
Okay, so this will have to be something that you will probably need to contact the IRCC about. I did enter a email address for that. Let me see if I can pull it up right quick again.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there it is. Email and ask directly. If you can't find it in the guidelines, I would say to go ahead and email.
Okay. Thanks. We'll move to the next question. Do we need to justify the percentage selected?
So I don't know the contents, but I'm assuming they mean the percentage of administrative costs. I'm going to assume that because I don't have the clarity on that, but you could, there's a section, I believe there's a section to a description section. You could justify it, but I know that in most applications, most funders expect that anywhere from 10 to 15% administrative costs. And it's usually 10 to 15% of the overall budget. But with this particular budget though, whatever percentage you use, it calculates that amount for you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, which is, what eligible expenses are included in the administrative line item?
No, the administrative line item is it's defaulted as a negotiated amount. So you don't actually put in a description here. This particular budget doesn't do it that way. It's just one defaulted line item, and then you put your percentage. So if it's 10%, 15%, and that'll be calculated for you. Your eligible expenses, where you're choosing your eligible expenses, you're doing that within your program delivery section.
Okay, Adele, do we have time for one more question? It's
one more question is fine.
Okay. If we've never had a CA, is there a resource to find experienced contractors who could advise on appropriate competitive costs and or call for proposal writing?
A resource on this. Well, I mean, I would say that you would have to, use your internal resources to help you find a qualified CA to support you. I'm a certified accountant. I don't know if there's any particular resources. I mean, I would just talk to maybe a partner organization, talk to someone who's aligned with what you're doing and see if they have any ideas on who you can speak to. You can do a Google search, but that really is something that you have to do some research on.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Adele. That's now our time, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Keisha, and thank you, Lesa. Just we have a few slides to conclude the session. Keisha, Lesa, any final words for our participants today?
For us, if they'd like to connect with the KAME consulting team, they can reach out via email or on our social media. Lisa can place the information in the chat. But we'd like to thank everyone to giving us the space to share the walk through the proposals, and happy to answer any other questions that folks may have. And they can reach out to you as well, Adele.
Thank you, Keisha. Lesa, any final words? Okay, maybe
well, I thank you for the opportunity. I hope that people have received. Am I clear? Sorry, it's a little feedback. I'm hoping that people receive some valuable information. I hope that people have gotten some good ideas, good information, and that they are well on their way to their journey of completing this application. I wish all of the organizations success and luck in everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Lesa, and thank you, Keisha. Now, regarding the questions placed on Slido, those are not forgotten. We're going to be collecting those questions, as well as the questions that were discussed today, and you will be provided with an FAQ document that includes those questions as well as the answers. We'll be sending an email to all the participants of the first session and the second session to inform them when that document is ready on the project site. So those questions, even though we did not address them today, they will be addressed and you will be provided with the answers for. I would like just to remind everyone here that we do have a workshop series that's still ongoing. In case you have not registered to that series, please note that we have the HR and volunteer management workshop taking place next week. And afterward, we have Governance 101 and Afrocentric Governance. If you have not registered, please reach out to me. Or when this meeting ends, you will have a browser open that will give you the evaluation links, one for English, one for French, and then also a link to register this series. But feel free to reach out to me too. And please do fill in the evaluation form, because those forms help us here at OCASI to take a look on what are the things that we need to improve upon for our workshops, and what are the things that you were you're okay with. Thank you, everyone, for attending this workshops. Thank you for our facilitators, Keisha and Lesa. Thank you for our amazing interpreters, LSQ, ASL, simultaneous French interpreters, and our caption writers. And thank you for the OCASI staff who are with us today to support with the technicalities. And thank you, the participants, for being part of this series. And hope to see you all next week. Have a good day.